Whenever I'm feeling like negative emotions, or if I have some kind of conflict that I need to work out, my first instinct is to go to my journal and start brain dumping and typing out all my feelings. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my corner of the web where we talk about self-care, mental health, personal growth, and other things that help us to be our best selves. So recently I have been getting a lot of questions about the topic of journaling, and a lot of people have been asking how to approach journaling, how to get started journaling, and specifically how can it help with our mental health and our mental well-being. And so today I'm going to talk about 6 different ways that we can approach journaling, as well as some tips for new journalers. So first, what exactly is journaling? Journaling, I think there's kind of a misconception that it is this very structured, rigid thing. Like you have this stereotypical image of someone in the park and gazing at the sunset and being like, "Dear journal, today I drove over the mountain." And it is definitely a form of journaling, but I don't think that journaling is as rigid or as structured as some people may want it to seem. Journaling is essentially just a place for us to process our thoughts and emotions and generally keep tabs on what happens in our day-to-day. So why is journaling specifically useful for our mental health? For me personally, I have been keeping a digital journal for the last 5 or 6 years. And when I say digital journal, I mean just instead of handwriting things, I keep things in a running Google Doc or a Word document. And journaling has personally been very, very therapeutic for me. It's become a tool that's really helpful for me whenever I need to process some weird emotions that I'm feeling, or if I can't quite figure out exactly what I'm thinking or what is going on internally. It's a place for me to just get everything out and process it. And personally, it's also been really helpful for tracking my mental and emotional growth over the years. I can go back to my journal from 2 or 3 years ago and I can see what I was thinking and feeling back then and see maybe I've grown a lot and those things are no longer problems for me, or maybe there are recurring things that I'm still thinking about today that I was thinking about a few years ago. And overall, I highly, highly, highly recommend everyone to journal to some degree. It's a super useful tool for our overall mental well-being. And so now I'm going to dive into the 6 different ways of journaling, and these, again, they're not the official types to journal. These are just trends and patterns that I noticed in how I like to journal. But hopefully having an idea of different types of journal entries or ways to journal, hopefully having this structure will help give some guidance to people who are just getting started. The first type of journal entry is the brain dump. Some people like to call this morning pages, and essentially it is just a stream of consciousness for you to just dump everything that's in your brain out onto a piece of paper or into your computer. A lot of people like to do this first thing in the morning or right before they go to bed, and it is a very helpful tool for just processing whatever is on your mind. So I have a paper notebook for my brain dump journaling entries, just because in the morning hours I typically like to be away from technology. So I usually will do my brain dump, morning pages, stream of consciousness type journaling first thing in the morning, and I'll usually just do a page or 2 of just stream of consciousness writing and get out whatever I'm thinking about first thing in the morning so I can have a fresh start to my day. And this is a very unstructured, free form of journaling. It is literally just meant to be a cleanse for your mind. Another way that I like to approach brain dump journaling is in my digital journal or my Google Doc. I will just type away whatever I'm feeling, get it all out onto my doc, and then I will put a summary and highlight things that I was thinking about. So then I can put a summary at the end and kind of get a nugget of information away from all the things that I was thinking about. This is just a helpful way for me to process whatever I'm thinking. The next type of journaling is an emotional trigger log, and this is a really common healing exercise too. Whenever we're doing any type of healing or emotional growth, it's really helpful to keep track of the things that emotionally trigger us. And so I made a TikTok about this a few days ago too, but it's a really helpful tool that I think a lot of people could benefit from. So how do you approach doing an emotional trigger log? Essentially, you'll just keep track of the things that cause really strong intense emotional reactions from you. This might be having like a disagreement with a friend, or maybe you wanted to like fight someone at the grocery store, or maybe something crazy happened in the news, or whatever you feel is causing like a strong emotional reaction, whatever it is. It's really helpful to document this in some sort of emotional trigger log. And once you document what specifically the trigger was, you will go through and ask yourself 3 questions. Ask yourself, what exactly were you feeling? Like, get very explicit about like what feelings you were feeling. Then ask yourself, why are you feeling this way? Maybe you're feeling a really strong emotional reaction because you're seeing like repeated patterns from your past, or something that happened to you in childhood is then linked to whatever you're feeling now. And then you'll ask yourself, how would you like to approach the situation in the future? And so as you start to collect more like emotional data on yourself, you start to become more aware of different things that cause emotional triggers in you. And as you become more aware of these triggers, you're able to manage them a lot better internally. The next type of journaling is a fairly common technique, and it is gratitude journaling. And gratitude journaling is a very helpful type of journal entry, or you can keep like a completely separate journal for your gratitudes. But every now and then I will do a gratitude journal entry in my endless Google Doc of journal entries, and I'll just write down 5 things that I'm grateful for, or 5 things that I was grateful for throughout the week or throughout the day. And especially if I have like a sad journal entry, or if I'm talking about something kind of intense in my journal, I usually like to end on somewhat of a more positive note and focus on some gratitudes at the end. And so this is pretty straightforward, just going through and bullet listing like different things that you're grateful for, and is overall just a really good tool for our emotional well-being. The 4th type of journal entry I like to call the check-in, and the check-in is pretty straightforward as well. It's exactly what it sounds like. You will just do a general check-in, like state of the world, state of the mind type of thing. And I generally try to keep check-ins pretty neutral, to have like just a neutral standpoint on what is objectively happening in your life. Think about it like just a mental snapshot of what is happening in a particular moment in time. The way I'll typically approach my check-ins is I'll ask myself, what is going on in the state of the world? And I'll talk about things that are happening outside of myself, like what is happening in my relationships, in politics, in my community, just whatever is influencing the world that is around you. Then I'll ask myself, what is the state of my mind? And I'll objectively try to observe what I'm thinking about, what I'm feeling, what I'm reacting to. And then I'll typically just end with a couple of gratitudes, because especially during quarantine, I find that my check-ins have been very negative for the most part, just given the nature of the fuckery of the world. But you know, we like to end with some positivity, but not like COVID positive, like emotion positive. The 5th way of journaling is the question and answer entry. And so some people like to journal specifically in regards to questions. Generally, you'll have a specific prompt. It'll either be like a 1 sentence or 1 question, and you'll respond to that prompt. And you can find different journaling prompts all over the internet, so I'll be sure to include a couple links below. But journaling prompts are super helpful for if you don't really know like what to think about, or like what you want to write about, but you want to journal and you want to do some like internal reflecting. Journaling prompts are a super good way to springboard into your mind and figure out some things about yourself. Some journaling prompts that I use a lot are just, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about? Or what would you like to tell your younger self? Or what are some questions that you are currently seeking answers to? And so journaling prompts are just really helpful for getting the ball rolling. The sixth form of journaling is the random thought. And this is just whenever you have like a random thought or some sudden realization that you want to jot down super quickly, but maybe you want to revisit later on. I have a random thoughts note document in my notes app on my phone. Typically I'll just have like random thoughts or like weird revelations while I'm walking around or something, or when I'm away from my computer or my journal. And this is a great way for me to just keep track of those small moments of inspiration or thinking. Or again, if you have a digital journal, you can obviously do this in like a Google Doc. And if you have the Google Docs app, you can keep track of your random thoughts there as well. Alright, so that was 6 different types of journal entries or journals that you can keep. And now we're gonna get into some tips for getting started. The first tip that's really important is to decide on your medium. And when I say medium, I just mean like, do you want to journal on pen and paper? Do you want to journal on your computer? Do you have a tablet? Because this is your whole journaling experience. And you can be like me, I have different journals for different things. Like I have my paper journal for my morning pages, and I keep the rest of my journaling on my computer. You might prefer to do like no computer journaling and you're purely a paper journal, or maybe you want to like doodle but you want to keep things more organized, so you have a tablet journal. And it's really up to you just to decide what works best for you. But I know for me that it's very motivating for me to write in my paper journal when I have like a nice notebook and nice pens. So if you do go the paper journaling route, it's obviously not necessary, but I do find that it's helpful if you have like a nice paper journal, like a nice moleskin and some emoji pens or something schmancy like that. But of course, none of these things are necessary. Journaling is a very free activity and should be. The next tip is to think about your writing style. And again, I mentioned this at the beginning of my video, but there's kind of this misconception of like you have to have this dear journal type of writing style. And that's helpful. Some people like to write in more of a narrative format, and some people are more like natural born writers, but you definitely don't have to write in a super formal way. You can just keep like bullets, short sentences, short paragraph, whatever works for you. And so I just wanted to throw this tip in here so people don't feel pressured to have to maintain like a super formal writing style. My next tip is to not journal when you only feel bad. And I'm totally guilty of this. I've totally done this a lot in the past, especially because I've conditioned myself almost to use my journal as like a coping tool. Like whenever I'm feeling like negative emotions, or if I have some kind of conflict that I need to work out, my first instinct is to go to my journal and start brain dumping and typing out all my feelings. And of course that is what a journal is for, but make sure you're also writing when you have positive or like neutral experiences as well. For example, when I look back at like my 2016 journal or something, like 95% of my journal entries are super angsty, and like I know 2016 was like not terrible for me. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was not like that bad where only bad shit happened to me. Now looking back on my journal, I wish I had written more about like some of the more positive experiences that happened, just like as a memento for me to keep in the future as well. And so this is just something to be mindful of if you find yourself falling into this pattern, because I know it happens to me and it happens to a lot of people, but something to keep in mind. The next tip, do not feel like you have to journal every single day. And some people will say like you should journal every single day. I personally don't, and that's fine with me. Just because I find when I put the pressure on myself to have to journal every single day, it becomes a stressful activity, and it's the opposite of what I intend my journal to be for. My journal is a place for me to monitor my mental health for the most part, and so if I tell myself I have to journal every single day, it becomes very stress inducing for me. And so I generally try to journal like twice a week or so, and that is a system that works for me. I think for things specifically like emotional triggers or gratitude journaling, I think those types of journaling are things that can benefit from you journaling every single day and making those habits. But for other types of state of the world, brain dump, random thoughts, like those types of journaling, I don't think are necessary for you to have to journal every single day for them to be useful for you. And the final tip is just to be honest with yourself. Again, this is your personal safe space. This is your place to monitor your mental health, your personal growth, and nobody is judging you for the things that you're writing about. You're not sharing your like personal journal with other people unless maybe you're sharing it with like a therapist or someone who you really trust. But again, your journal is truly your safe space for you and you only. And the only way for you to really benefit from it is if you're being very honest with yourself. Self-honesty is super crucial for helping to understand and processing whatever is happening in your brain. And again, nobody is judging you. It is totally okay to just let your brain go loose in whatever form you feel is helpful. Whew. Okay, so that is some different types of journal entries, 6 different types of journal entries, and some tips for getting started. I hope this was helpful for people and helped to clarify a bit more about how to approach journaling or if you need some more structure in your journal. But I truly believe journaling is such an important part of self-care and mental health and is such an important part of my personal growth journey. If you did find this video helpful, I would really appreciate a good old like or subscribe. And that is all that I have to say. All right, happy journaling, y'all. Bye.